I just want to say a special congratulations to all of our artists that are in the room. They've done a wonderful job this weekend, and it's not ended. It's not ended. We have some things happening this evening, and then also tomorrow at 2 o'clock at the Sir Charles Haywood Yacht Club. We want to welcome all of you to come out and support the students that we talked about earlier today. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right, and if we can get a word from Dave. All right. So once again, thank you so much for being with us. Ian Strachan is campus president of the University of the Bahamas North and professor of English. He holds an AA in English and literature from the University of the Bahamas and a teacher's certificate from the University of the West Indies in 1988, a BA in English from Morehouse College in 1990, and an MA in 1993, and PhD in 1995 in English from the University of Pennsylvania. He is a former research fellow at the Carter G. Woodson Institute at the University of Virginia, 1998 through 1999, and a former assistant professor of English at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, 1999 to 2001. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Dr. Ian Strachan.
Thank you so much. And I was telling them I'm a very loud person normally, so I don't know that I need the mic, but hopefully we'll be good. It's so wonderful to be here at this event. This is a great, fantastic moment for Grand Bahama, I think. And I've been asked to give a little talk, and I'm going to preface it with all sorts of disclaimers. First of all, I'm not an art historian. As you heard, I'm an English professor, but obviously culture and cultural expression and art is something which is central to my own life, because I am, in fact, an artist, but not a visual one. I'm a dramatist, a poet, novelist, filmmaker. Well, I guess that does make me a little bit of a visual artist, since I dabble in film. And as I also have to give another disclaimer, which is that there are so many amazing artists in the country and new ones emerging that I can't possibly talk about all of them. And since I started this little presentation, which is in the last 48 hours, I just realized how many people I had not mentioned and not included in the late nights that I was trying to cobble it together. And some of them are awesome people are actually in this room, like Chantal and Amos Ferguson and Jackson Petit, John Cox, Lillian Blades, Jody Minnis, Jamal Arul, LeVar Monroe, so many that I could talk about. But in any event, I'll see what I can do to try to provide a somewhat useful window or rubric through which to think about Bahamian visual art, because the journey of these artists, some of them I actually went to college with, has sort of been parallel to my own. And a lot of what we consider the Bahamian art scene or Bahamian modern art tradition began with Chelsea pottery many years ago. So Brent Malone and Max Taylor and Kendall Hanna. But what is art doing? Let's start there. Why do people? I don't want us to fixate on Winslow Homer for too long, but anyway, I'll leave it there for now. What is art? What is art trying to accomplish, or what is the animating energy or purpose of the visual art? And you heard from artists themselves talking, which was really compelling and inspiring. But I think there are a number of things that account for the work of the artist. Artists are, in a way, working out identity. Who am I? Right? I think artists also, and we'll see some of this, sometimes it's just the pleasure of expressing virtuosity. I have an amazing gift. Look at what amazing things I can do. There's a Chinese artist, and I'm going to butcher his name, Wei Wei, I think his name is, who recently made a rendition of, I think it's Monet, out of 650,000 Lego pieces. So that's an example of what I mean when I talk about virtuosity, and I think about Wallace. I don't know if you went to school with Wallace at the same time, who creating the art out of salt, Alan Wallace, right? Creating art out of salt. So look at how awesome I am, and not as a vanity thing, but just look at this gift I have, and isn't this amazing, right? So virtuosity. I think art is also an invitation to come and play, to experience that joy of play, something that we all were hopefully comfortable with as children, right? And we entered that space in childhood, and art is a way of recapturing, reigniting, or re-inhabiting that. I think artists do to please, right? And especially when you consider and I'll talk a little bit more about that, and the dynamics of economy and tourism and so on. There's an instinct that you see in some. I want to create something pleasant. I want to create something that pleases people, that they would enjoy looking at, putting on their wall. They get a good feeling every time they see it. Not all art is about that. Some art doesn't want to please you, right? Some art wants to make you uncomfortable, right? Right, or challenge you, right? I think there's also the function of serving as a record, as remembrance of our history, of the events of our lives, sometimes horrific events, whether it's a civil war or what have you, or Dorian, all right? Remembrance and record. And the art also seeks to speak truth. And artists are always in conversation with other artists, masters that came before, greats that came before. They're in conversation. Like, for instance, all the Madonnas you've seen, all the mothers and child treatments of mother and child that you've seen. Think about all of those, right? And then I think the artist is also going through an existential, is exploring and meditating on their own existential condition and their own human experience, seeking meaning, trying to create meaning, and also to inspire. All right, so I like to think about art, and beginning with Winslow Homer, this American visitor to our country from the 19th century, and he stands out to me as one of as a marker in time for when a serious artist of sort of global talent started looking at Bahamian life and saw it through a certain lens, right? And his subjects, he did a lot of watercolor, fascinated by the light and by the people, and they were, to me, sort of almost part of the landscape for him. I have a clicker. I guess I should use it. There's another one, a wall in Nassau, right? So this, I find it interesting how these sort of, this gaze is repeated in the 20th century by Bahamian artists to some extent. So I'm gonna just, so like this is Eddie Millis, right? So so again though, there is no, in this particular work, these are not, you don't really get to see the true faces of these children and to know them intimately like that, but they're fishing, they are a part of what I guess I could call it, there's a trend in Bahamian art which I would call almost Bahamian pastoral, or Bahamian pastoral, and even a sort of nostalgia expressed in Bahamian art that you find. Wanting to capture a simpler time, a time from before, life in the family islands, a simpler, more rural existence, and of course, and experiencing nature in a certain way. So there's a kind of Bahamian pastoral. This is another Eddie Menace, right? So again, the focus on the fauna, on the beauty, and on like you don't find Bahamian artists saying, I'm going to stand at the corner of East Street and Market and create a realistic painting of the homeless people, the garbage, the traffic, the stray dogs. You see what I'm saying? That's not, so this sort of choice to go with this sort of pastoral beauty, and in a way, it is almost an extension of the postcard or the brochure in a way. Not that this is not a sincere appreciation for natural beauty, it is. But it also fits well in the economy or in the possible exchange that can happen for an artist. Does that make sense? Right? In other words, I'll just say it plainly, something like this is pretty easy to sell. Let me put it that way. Right? It's pretty easy to sell in the Bahamas. Yeah. And this is Dorman Stubbs. Right? Those were Eddie Menace. This is Dorman Stubbs. Sort of the same kind of focus. And then, of course, capturing a regatta. What's interesting? I think about this often. So many Bahamians, because most Bahamians live in New Providence, have a whole different notion of what regatta is. I've gone to the Andros Regatta, and most of the young people who went to the regatta had no interest in the actual boat race. They didn't actually even. They were almost oblivious to it. They were there to drink, party, dance, hang out, hook up, and there was this thing happening off the shore there that involved people in the distance, and they're like, okay, let's play some dominoes, So again, choosing to tell the regatta story, but this is the story you choose to tell. The artist decides what story they'll tell, right? And not that this is not the story, but you choose this because there's a poetry and a beauty and an elegance and to it that, again, I think creates constructs a Bahamas, which is idyllic, right? Paradise-like, and so that's what some of the art does, right? And then this is actually Lowe, Alton Lowe, right? Abaconian, right? So similar theme, and yeah, right. Yeah, I'm not sure if he was actually teaching art at Government High School when I was a teenager, and then he ended up moving to the University of the Bahamas and was largely responsible for the central bank exhibits and competitions and the FinCo summer camps for artists. Antonius Roberts really has done a lot to advance art in the country. But again, one of the things that when you're in such an amazingly beautiful country, you're going to have to respond to nature. You're going to have to, and you're likely to, and he calls it studies and celebration. You're going to respond. That's going to resonate with you, and then you want to reflect that. And so this is another one of those things. It's all of the work of Bahamian artists that focuses on the natural beauty, focuses on the wildlife, focuses on the birds, egrets, flamingos, parrots, iguanas, lizards, just fish. I mean, Antonius has gone through different stages, filling galleries with, this one's going to be all fish. This one's going to be all bubbles and jellyfish. This one's going to be all egrets. Like that's, he's gone through some amazing transformations as an artist. And that is again, an easy to sell in the economy because of its beauty. It doesn't ask you to feel or think anything too uncomfortable, right? This is Brent Malone. So another key theme in Bahamian art is, of course, celebrating cultural tradition and identity. And with him, one of those key things was Junkanoo and the expressions of masculinity and masculine beauty in Junkanoo, the drummer, the cowbeller, just the pieces, the very and our Junkanoo is the biggest in the world to connect and to celebrate and to honor, right? Which is what Junkanoo is, right? How, if you think about Junkanoo as this moment in time where you step out of the ordinary, out of your work, it even took place during slavery. So when slaves got time off at Christmas, they, unsupervised. And think about it, it's interesting because there were some cultures where drums were banned. Some colonies, some slave societies where drums were banned, not in the Bahamas, thankfully, right? Not that you're going to stop us from making noise, because that's how the Trinidadians ended up, creating steel pan. But so that this sense of I'm going to express an identity which is different from the colonial one or the one that's being imposed on me, radically different. I'm going to inhabit this in this moment. And though I might be poor, I'm going to put on this amazing beauty, which is inside me, which you might be denying me every other day of the year. But look at me now, right? So, and he captures some of that. And then, so again, thinking about identity, this is Stan, and Stan Burnside, another artist who spent time at the university mentoring other artists and teaching. But there is a strand of Bahamian art that intentionally references African cultural motifs and themes and integrates that. But also in Stan, you get, wow, how can I put it? Like, remember I started talking about pastoral. And you saw the pretty wooden home in the family island in the Ponciana tree. Now, again, and I said, would an artist ever paint East Street and Market and all the rest of it? But this is its own kind of nostalgia, right? And its own kind of pastoral, right? And celebrating home, but also elevating home. So you don't see here depression or sadness or marginality necessarily or deprivation of any sort. What you see here is a safe, wholesome place where there is family and there's marbles, there's a Junkanoo chicken, three Junkanoo chickens actually, right? So chickens don't quite come in those patterns, but some Junkanoo chickens are there, and so there's this this elevation and celebration of where we came from. You heard Matthew say, "Don't forget where you come from," right? There are of course still people living in community like this, but the point is, this is where I'm from. This is the center of my world, and there is beauty here, right? And of course, you see, she fetching water. There's no implant. There's no plumbing, right? The most interesting thing about this painting for me, I don't know about you. What is it for you? What draws your eye? For me, it's the belly button. Why do you have this yellow? Yeah. There's something about that. Something about the butt. Is it a button or is it a belly button? Yes, but it's also so to me it's like, here is the navel of the world. Here is the birthplace. Am I going too deep? I see someone rolling their eyes. Where did you get that from? I have a PhD in English. I'm going to interpret and maybe over-interpret. But to me, it's very, very, it just draws my eye. And it says, Jackson is saying that to me it's symbolic. And intentional. That's not a, if I were painting it, it would have been a black button if I had to put a button at all. You see what I'm saying? So you made it yellow. Like, why'd you do that? This is Kendall Hanna, right? So then you have a whole nother, there are the Bahamian artists who prefer the abstract form, and they leave the figure out altogether, and they're, again, the interior coming out, their own psychological or existential state, their own experience, their own soul's journey, their own spirituality, their own emotion, right, coming through their work. And so Kendall is, a senior artist in this space, and a radical departure from the nostalgia work, or of others. And then there's one of my favorites, Max Taylor, who is very much, there's just so much power. And not that he doesn't work in color, but to me, my favorite work of his is these prints, these black and white, these lino cuts. And this one is actually in remembrance. I cut off the feet, which you can't see. I'm sorry. I want it to be as big as possible. I didn't think about it. So, but and so there's also a trend, of course, to make political statement in art, to have an opinion and make a comment about our world and our politics, and that is another path that you see in Bahamian artists, that one that resonates very, very much so with me. And this is Antonius, back to Antonius again, but Antonius doing something completely different, right? Sacred space. And Antonius thinking about ancestors, thinking about the history of slavery, thinking about what we don't remember, what we don't want to make conscious. And think about it. How do you, when I think about slavery in the Bahamas, and I'm writing a novel about this, I'm hoping to publish it in August. I hope you will come. I'm gonna have a reading here. But the land, the Bahamas is a place, in my opinion, that wants to forget that happened. Why do I say that? Because the sites where these things happen are all covered in bush. Most Bahamians don't know where they are. Where are the plantations? I mean, there are other societies that take a whole different view. Like, you could go on tours of plantations in the United States. Louisiana and Georgia and Carolina, the houses are still there. They preserve them. And so it's interesting that we didn't preserve them. That says something. But I think what you don't remember and carry with you, you are in the danger of repeating. Are you really over something if all you did was just suppress it, right? Put it in the corner of your mind. And so work like this, I really resonate with me, because he was going there in a physical deal with these voices and these spirits and these ancestors of ours. That's how I interpreted it. But like I said, Alan Wallace, to me, Alan just wants to blow your mind. To me, Alan just wants you to go, wow. That's his whole mission, is for you to just be like, oh, that's just amazing. How did you do that? Which is what I always end up doing, right? All right. So he wants to, and then again, you're experiencing nature, but now it's a whole different texture. Here's another one with a woman with, I think it's like dark pink bougainvillea. That's the one I wanted to use, but I couldn't find a good copy late last night. But so I like this one a lot too. Now these are Matthew, and Matthew, he's not just, okay, I want to celebrate Bahamian icons. And I don't know if you ever met Ronnie Butler. Ronnie Butler is a character. He was a personality, right? On top of being an amazing musician and a sort of, I guess an icon of identity. Like I tell people, one of the reasons I had a sense of being Bahamian was the music of my childhood, which was Ronnie Butler, Pat Raming, Tony McKay, the Obeah Man, Eddie Minnis. Like, I know all the lyrics to all those songs. And so I felt grounded. And so to celebrate him, he could just give you a portrait, but he runs it through a filter in a way that makes it engaging. And I like to look at when Matthew doesn't run it through that filter. Like sometimes he just gives it a straight portrait, and so he has a sense of humor, I think. But my favorite, actually, one of his is Joseph Spence, but I don't have that one. And he celebrates these icons like Ed Moxie, Ed Moxie here. And I actually wanted to include Wild Goose's portrait of Hubert Ingram because it's definitely commentary. It's called Hubiggity, right? It captures the personality of the man constantly strategizing and enjoying the game of politics. It comes through the piece that I asked him about it last. He said he couldn't find it. But the painting is owned by Don Davies, so it's around. I'll get one. Oh, go back. Back to Stan. Burma Road, back to Max Taylor. Burma Road riot, all right? And so steeped in a sense of pride in black history and the black struggle for rights and dignity, Max is prepared to tell those stories. He also did a series, he and I both addressed an issue together. I mean, well, separately, but together. In July of 1990, there was a Defense Force vessel called the Yellow Elder, which intercepted a Haitian sloop in the Exumas. And they tried to tow that vessel into safe harbor, but the water was choppy, and the Haitian vessel broke apart. And many people drowned. They saved as many as they could. He painted a series about that incident, and I wrote a play called Diary of Souls about the same incident. And then when I staged the play, I actually had some of his art in the lobby. So he's paying attention to these serious touch points in Bahamian history and trying to be a record and tell the story and give honor. All right? And so I especially like his work for that reason. Interesting, Max is one of those people who left. He left and went to South Carolina. He doesn't live here. He creates his work almost as an exile. And the choice of that, I wonder how much the subject matter and his affinities or his preoccupations influence that choice, that he could make it and make a living there easier given his subject matter as opposed to here, right? So one of the things that is important to think about as we talk about art and art creation in the Bahamas is the values in the country and just the economic dynamics and the ethos of the country. The ethos of the country. Do you want this on your wall? Not everybody would, right? Not everybody would. This is another powerful piece, John Beadle, who I went to university with him. We were there at the same time. And he's one of these real student of Stan and Jackson, and he's really gone in his own direction. But the commentary here is powerful in my mind. Because the machete, what does the machete symbolize in the Bahamian context of the late 20th century? The machete doesn't really symbolize the way Bahamians make their living, the way Bahamians experience food creation or anything. It's because we move beyond that. Most Bahamians have moved beyond that. They don't cut their own grass. They don't grow their own food. You follow? We've migrated from those spaces, and we go to food stores, and we go to Wendy's and McDonald's when we're hungry. So this is really the symbol or the tool of the immigrant, of the Haitian immigrant who comes here to make a living, who leaves family and friends and what they know to come and try to eke out, hopefully find a better life for themselves and their children. And this is their stock and trade. And, you know, as they walk out in public, they cover it up with newspaper or brown paper bag, so the police won't harass them and think they're crazy and they're about to go chop somebody's head off, right? So this rain and descending of, I don't feel threatened by this. I don't feel like this is danger to me at all. I feel like it's saying, do you see these people who are us, who are not like us, but who are also our people in our midst, working for this society? Do you, right? To me, that's what I get from it. And do you count them? Or you do only value them for what they do for you, right? You know, there's so many different ways to There was another piece he had in this exhibit. It was a three-dimensional piece of cardboard sculpture, and a man had on the mask of a mule, and he was walking across water. So he was telling the story of, I don't know if you remember that one, but telling the story of Haitians who come here and work so hard for this society, right? But they face so much prejudice, hostility, and discrimination, and are, unfortunately, because of the way our Constitution is set up, stateless for so many years, right? And are scapegoated in the society. We'll come back to that one. So this is another schoolmate of mine, Dion Benjamin, who works mostly in graphic art, but it's always fascinating when she creates something. And this is like my favorite piece of hers. And I keep telling her I want to put it on the cover of a book of mine. The Pledge of Allegiance, but it's the Black Rob Pledge of Allegiance, right? So this play on the Bahamian flag. And so again, like I said, there is a stream of political statement and commentary. The artist pricking the conscience of the nation, the artist challenging prejudice, challenging preconceived notions, trying to cast away ignorance, the artist going against the stream. That's inspiring to me. That's the kind of artist I try to be. And I love it, and I feel so much affinity when I see the visual artists do it. Because there's a great deal of pressure if you're going to make the investment to go buy a canvas and get paint and put in hours, and you have bills, the pressure is to do something that will just please people. Remember I said some art just pleases. Because we pledge our allegiance to the flag. So this is like, the pledge is saying we are one, we are united, love and service. But what does she do? She says, no, we are not one. We are not working together. We're fighting against each other. We're not unified. And we're all selfish. We're being selfish. We're not building community. We're not focusing on that side of it. All right. So this was a very controversial, and I just want to make it clear, I've never thought of Perry Christie as Hitler. Never. And never in a million years would I compare him. But the point was, this artist did. This artist decided to make this statement. And this was in a central bank exhibit. And I don't think the artist tells a story. You can go on the Tribune and see the story. Someone kept removing the name and the price of the painting. Like they were angry, and so they kept, every day, someone removed it. The artist was saying, I couldn't, people keep moving my name and the price of the painting. So, but it ended up getting a lot of, and Perry Christie responded how he thought it was in such poor taste and all the rest of it. But I use it here because, and again, it's not, the edges are missing, but the point is, sometimes artists step out and they do this. And people came down on this artist like a ton of bricks. This is you have freedom of speech, you have freedom of association and all the rest of it, and freedom of expression. That this person wants to make a point, and they made it, right? You don't have to agree, right? Yeah, and then oh, now you've done it. Afterward I'll Google it for you. I don't remember the name. I think he's in Knowles. Just Google Perry Christie tasteless, and you'll find you'll find the story. It'll come right to the top. All right. Tavares Strachan, another UB grad, but doing some very interesting things. Some out of this world stuff, actually, literally out of this world, some of it. But again, identity and politics. So, and the layers of storytelling. And the name of it escapes me, but it's obviously, in a sense, it is about who you deify, who you glorify, who you celebrate, how you tell your history. So you juxtapose the Queen Elizabeth, queen of an empire. Yes, an empire that eventually got dismantled after the World War. But you juxtapose that to an African emperor, right? Ethiopia, the only country that was not colonized, entered and fought a war against Italy and maintained its independence. So I find his work interesting in terms of those layers. And then there's an image of an Arctic explorer, and he does work on the one black Arctic explorer. So it's an interesting. In the basketball rim, that's also an interesting touch. You know, this is another one by him, and it's there's an African king, Oba, a Benin bronze, but then there's also Milo Butler in the image. So I love his, and then there's juxtaposing that with space travel and adventure and achievement. I find his work interesting, and I have to admit that I haven't spent enough time looking at him to have more opinion, but it's worth checking him out if you have never looked at his work. And I think this might be my last one. and unfortunately, I have one. It got your stamp on it. I know, but again, middle of the night. So, and I want to end here because and I taught Ben. Didn't teach him art. Taught him English. But extremely proud of him, and such a powerful. So again, from my vantage point, you can't have a conversation about this piece if you don't consider the moment that it was in. The moment it was in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement, the violence, police brutality that shocked the whole world. But then also understanding the Bahamas as a former colony, a place where certain histories were erased and replaced with other histories, where the economy is one that's built around tourism. So you have 400,000 people who must cater to 5 or 6 million visitors from another world, in another place, another race, another background. And so being on the margins in your own land, or seeing, or not being able to see yourself on the screen, or see yourself celebrated, or see your sound, it's like I tell people, I always challenge my students, as we were independent in 1973. Let's think about what colonialism really means. All right, and how it works. Or let's think about, the word I wrote down is asymmetry. There's an asymmetry to being Bahamian. What do I mean? That the information, the cultural messages, the cultural products entering overwhelm what we put out into the world. There's an asymmetry, right? So, and if you turn on the radio, you're going to hear more American, Jamaican, or Trinidadian music than Bahamian music. If you go on most young people's phone under the age of 25 and you say, let me see your playlist, it will be mostly American, Jamaican music. And so, in a way, you have statehood, but then there are these other kinds of colonialism, of being captured, other ways you can be captured, culturally captured, your imagination can be captured. So, like, for instance, even just consuming television and film, growing up in an age where, my heroes on the big screen, they would have been Clint Eastwood, Charles Bronson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, who played Sean Connery, so yeah, Dukes of Hazzard, all this other stuff that is wonderful, great, and I can participate in that world. That you can drop me off in the United States, and I can have a cultural conversation, and I get all the references. You know what I mean? I can talk about what was the one with the hillbillies? Beverly Hill Hillbillies. Oh, I can talk. I can just list TV shows that I watch as from the United States that are part of me. But what do Americans have that's a part of them that came from us, right? And we're not alone in this. It's the most powerful country in the world, and it's just, it has Hollywood, and it's just mass producing its cultural creations and exporting them. But it's still the reality that we are in this asymmetrical relationship, and that must create some dissonance in terms of, well, do I have value? Am I beautiful? Is my story interesting? Is my story an important one? I see all of that in this work that Ben created, and of course tricks you into, because it took me a while to figure it out. Actually, it took me a while, right? And so that's the other thing the artist can do, is pull you in and then flip it on you, right? Which I think is, I think if you can pull it as an artist, right? So I think that's the last slide I have. And as again, I feel some type of way about all the people I didn't get to talk about. But make sure I didn't leave out any. Yeah, I think I covered most of my thoughts. So that's my presentation. Thank you. I don't know if you have questions. I'd be happy to take them. If not, that's fine. Yes. Jackson. Oh, you want him? It's small enough. Okay. She wanted to know what Stan's brother's name was. Jackson Burnside. Yeah. He passed away. Anybody else? Good. Well, thank you for being an attentive audience. I really appreciate it. Yes. Thank you. Good. Okay. Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone. We're looking forward to seeing you guys again this evening at the Stone Crab, if you can come out to be along with the artists and everyone there. And also tomorrow at 2 o'clock at the Sir Charles Haywood Yacht Club for the student show. Thank you again.
Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Same here.
Do you have